Hi everyone, so we are going to start heading into the next chapter of our course, which is taking us into the early 20th century, so right at the start of the 1900s. So to start off this chapter, I want to first bring up some local history, some Buffalo history that played a major role on the national stage. So what am I talking about? Well, let's go ahead and open up our PowerPoint, the century that started with a big bang, and it happened right in your backyard. So go ahead and open that up. And we'll go through that to see what I'm talking about here. Okay, so first I'm going to start us off with a little bit of trivia. So what you see here are the 4 presidents in U.S. history to have been assassinated. Possibly what you're most familiar with, or who you're most familiar with, is President Lincoln and President Kennedy. But there is 2 presidents, but one in particular that I'm going to bring up today, and that's because this president was assassinated in Buffalo, New York. So a little bit of trivia for you. Which one of these presidents was shot and killed in Buffalo, New York? And that would be President William McKinley. Our 25th president was shot and killed in Buffalo, New York. So what was he doing in Buffalo? Well, here's a little bit of what you need to know. President McKinley was visiting Buffalo for the Pan Am Expedition, which was at the time the World's Fair. And he had come here in September of 1901, visited the fair, and gave a speech. And after he was done speaking to a massive crowd, he was shot and killed. And he was shot, and several days later, he ended up dying from his injuries. And so what I want to show you outside of our PowerPoint real quick is some interesting footage that I came across, which was taken in Buffalo here. And this was President McKinley's casket being brought out of the house where he had passed away. And maybe you're more familiar with the funeral procession for President Kennedy after he passed. And so kind of similar with the procession of an assassinated president. So that's what you're seeing here. This was President McKinley's procession in Buffalo after he had passed. Okay. Let that load up again. So what happened next? Well, the next thing we had to do was get the vice president in town to be sworn in as president. And so they called on then Vice President Theodore Roosevelt to come into Buffalo and be sworn in as the 26th president of the United States. And he took the oath of office on a mansion on Delaware Avenue. It was then, it's the Wilcox Mansion, now the Theodore Roosevelt inaugural site. And he was sworn in as President of the United States in the library. And so this slide here has a video, an intro video to the Theodore Roosevelt inaugural site that I want you to take a look at because we're going to be visiting the site for a field trip. So I want you to get an introduction to what the site is all about. Not only does it tell you the history of what happened when President McKinley was here, the assassination of President McKinley, the inauguration of President Roosevelt, but it also really focuses on the central issues that President Roosevelt was going to be facing heading into his new presidency and also into the new century, the beginning of the 1900s for the United States. So take a look at that and try to think of any questions or ways that some of these issues may still play a role or might be seen today, which they certainly are. So that covers our slideshow there. Real quick, again, since we'll be going to the site, I want to have you take a look at the website for the TR site, which goes over what the site itself features, a lot of history as to what was going on in the country at the time of the Pan Am Expedition and of the assassination. You'll of course go into the library where Theodore Roosevelt was sworn in as president. And then you get to visit the rest of the library, visit the rest of the site, which really tries to bring the issues of what President Roosevelt was facing into some of the issues that we're dealing with as a nation today. So take a look at that and come up with any questions that you might have for when we visit the site and what you might be looking forward to as we begin to cover our chapter on the turn of the 20th century. Okay? And if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Take care.